Welcome to the Intentional Health for Women podcast. I'm your host, Garrett GQ Query. This podcast is dedicated to developing intentional health for women. Former 400-pound fat man turned health and fitness professional, specializing in women's health. In this podcast, you will find over a decade of experience in the health and fitness industry, serving women to become their most intentional self through strength training, nutrition, and lifestyle practices. Each week, we will dive into a variety of different topics, ranging from interviews with women leading the way in the health and fitness industry, client case studies throughout the years, myth busting, social media trends, female hormones, gut health, and so much more. We are not normal. We are intentional. Welcome to another episode of the Intentional Health for Women podcast. I'm your host, Garrett GQ Query, and I'm joined by Courtney this morning. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
so excited.
So let's dive right in. Did a little bit of research, dove into your story, background. You move across country, born and raised Midwest girl.
Yep.
Heartbreak.
So much.
Is that like, for you, is that like one of the lowest moments? Is that like right then and there, like hitting the lowest moment for you, or is there something else?
No, because I wouldn't even say like, oh, we're really getting into this. Let's go. I wouldn't say it was even the heartbreak. I think discovering more of it was like inherently like I was broken on the inside, and it was more of my identity and me coming from a place of lack, and that there was like these deeply written like insecurity. I think it was more of that piece that broke me, that was my low. It was less of like my heart was broken from relationships or from the move or from all these different things, and it was discovering more of like inside I was hurting more than anything. And that for a lot of my life, I was just putting on the show of being a bold, courageous woman, which God bless, I always really have been. I've always shown up that way. But I think for a while, it was more of coming from a place of insecurity versus now I truly do know who I am. I'm very confident in who I am. And so I can show up that way and be like, yeah, that's just like, that is who I am.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that? Like what? Like, I guess unpack that more as far as like the like place of lack, like as far as like the relationship goes and what have you, is it's like just like seeking that comfort in someone else?
Yeah, 100%. And I did a little research on my own. I see that you've kind of gone through your own weight loss transformation, which congrats, literally so cool. And I think you learn a lot through that season of life, right? You learn a lot of how people have viewed you from before to how they talk to you now. And it's a very interesting transition period, not only for yourself and like what you're seeing go on in the mirror, but you're seeing how people treat you differently all of a sudden, right? And it's just a very confusing time period where it's like, oh, I'm losing weight and now I'm getting more male attention. And you think that that's the validation that you've been looking for. You're like, oh yeah, finally. But then you show up, and I started kind of being so proud of that validation. And I was like, this is not exactly what I was looking for. Like I still felt not myself on the inside. I still felt that lack, right? Like I wasn't full. Something was missing, though I was still getting that external validation finally that I had been looking for all of my life. So I also went through a big weight loss transformation. I was kind of pushing the scale at like 210. I say anywhere from like 150, 160, depending on the season now. So overall, there's been like 60 to 70 pound weight loss for me within my journey, and just learning that confidence doesn't come from the scale. Confidence doesn't come from that weight loss journey. Confidence comes from a whole different place. And for me, it was the Lord, finding that within the last couple of years for me. And then also just in integrity with the things I was doing, finding that I loved to work on my habits and my lifestyle and my mindset more than anything else. It was less of the nutrition and the training, and it was more of like, I want to change my life sort of thing.
Yeah.
Tangent.
All good. Putting into perspective, how tall are you?
5'4".
Okay. So yeah, good. Have a handful of clients like around that same height. And yeah, I mean, that's 70 pounds lost. That's a dramatic difference for someone at your height. How long ago was that? Like, when did that kind of like all unfold?
It started my junior year of college, and college is like always, I always talk to my college students and my college clients, honestly, and they're like, this is the hardest time. Like, I can't make changes. And I love to say that I started my journey in college because that couldn't have been the easiest time to get started, right? Everyone's looking for that perfect time. And I'm like, I started in the messiest time. Like, let's talk about that. I was deep into my degree. Like, junior year is the hardest year typically within your degree. I was exercise science major and I was grinding that way. But externally, I was also still very much so known as the party girl in college. Like, I was very much known to be the girl. If you called me up, I was ready for a good party. I was a great time in college. And, you know, I let that get it got carried away because I became kind of that people pleaser, because I wanted to be liked, when I was at the beginning of my journey, because I thought because of my looks, like I wasn't going to get anywhere. People weren't going to like me. So I kind of was always doing what other people wanted because I thought that that was what was going to get me liked, right? So this is where I was coming from at the beginning of my journey. I was drinking a ton. I was in college working on my degree. I still was very riddled and like I was a very good student. So I had that dichotomy. Very interesting. Go out on a thirsty Thursday, still showed up to the library, turned on the lights at 5 a.m. So I was always very disciplined in a way. I've always been this way. Yeah, right? It was weird. But also my junior year of college, again, a lot was going on around me. So I was in a sorority and my big had actually passed away my junior year. Just dropped dead. No one, like, she didn't know she was sick. No one knew anything was going on. Turned out she had congestive heart failure. I still to this day don't know too much about it, but it's kind of like that silent killer, apparently, allegedly. Again, I don't know much about it.
When was this?
Junior year.
Like what year?
Oh, it would have been 2019.
Okay.
2018, 2019.
Conspiracy theorist in me.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I see you. It was before the times. But yeah, that was really tough. She was my mentor in school, and whilst being a party girl, she was kind of like my very level-headed like mom, honestly. Like she would always come to me and be very nurturing. So when that happened, it was very confusing. Also, I lived in a dorm with 3 other women, and there was just like a lot of mental health issues going on with some of my best friends, the ones I've known since middle school. So again, just kind of setting the scene, a lot of external factors going around, like a lot of things out of my control, stories I can't really tell today. But there's just a lot going on. It felt like a very heavy year. And for some reason, that's the year I flipped the switch on my health and fitness journey too. Like all at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of all these things. And I was like, the thing I can control is learning how to be better at my nutrition, learning to go to the gym a little bit more. And I flipped the switch. And I'm also, another backstory, former athlete. So I also grew up my whole life playing sports. And so that was kind of what I had known to be my exercise. And I realized going to college, I kind of let that all go because I didn't go on to be a collegiate athlete. It was pretty mediocre, but I still was an athlete growing up.
Yeah.
Then I got to school, stopped playing, did the sorority life, started drinking. And I just kind of realized that junior year, I'm like, all these things are happening and I don't feel like myself and I don't not know what's going on, but I'm going to take this all back into control. And I did. I flipped the switch and I started, listening to health and fitness podcasts. I know my first one I listened to was Mindset Mentor by Rob Dial. I don't know if you ever listened to it, but he's kind of notoriously known as like the wake up at 5 a.m. kind of guy, like very hardcore, like do this iron hard challenge, like get to the gym super early. So I did. I started flipping myself out of bed at 5 a.m. I would go to the gym and that kickstarted something for me. I loved it so very much. And yeah, that's kind of my start. That junior year during the hardest time of my life is when I really dug in deep.
Yeah. I mean, I think anybody who knows the Midwest, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm a Minnesota kid. grew up right next to NDSU. NDSU is predominantly known as being like one of the top 3 drinking schools in the country. It's
Yep.
NDSU, it's UND, and it's ASU. Fun fact.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know this.
Yes. Are typically like the top 3. They kind of neck and neck for top 3 party schools in the US, and Nebraska, I'm sure, isn't far behind in that.
Well, what else is there to do?
So I mean, it's not surprising. Like in that story, like you say, you know, you're living with 3 other girls. Mental health isn't the greatest. Like, isn't your strong suit. And I feel like that's really just not uncommon with like the perfect cocktail of being in school, high stress, junior year, lots and lots of alcohol, a lot of times poor nutrition decisions, not moving your body enough, probably not getting enough sunlight. Like it all compounds, right? Because especially like living in the Midwest, like there's on average 6 to 8 months a year, you barely see the sun.
Right.
And it's just miserably cold.
Yep.
So it all compounds on itself, and it's no wonder. And then like you slap in synthetic, you know, hormones with birth control, which is a very common thing to be utilized in college now.
Yeah.
And it's just this recipe for, you know, a lot of mental health issues. And really like one of the biggest things I think that someone can pull away from this is there's no perfect season.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can sit here and be like, I'm personally 34. Like how old are you?
27. I was like, how old am I? 27.
Okay. So getting to like your later 20s, like you're probably experiencing a little bit more of like, you know, some friends and what have you, like getting married, having kids.
Yeah.
And a different season, right?
Yeah.
A lot of different busyness. And it's really easy as we step away from those years to look back and be like, oh man, like life was so easy.
Yeah.
Right? Because looking back, like your perception is like, oh, I didn't really have a lot of responsibilities, but
right.
There is a decent amount of responsibility in college, like, right. As far as like trying to be a good student, navigate life. And like you said, kind of discovering who you are and not necessarily maybe trying to navigate not being a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Walk through that a little bit as far as like, what did that look like in college, like in a time where like you, like a lot of like your social circle, a lot of your interactions day to day is reliant on like going to parties, going to social activities and being the oddball out and saying no and getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to the gym and doing these things. Like that had to have been pretty alienating in that season.
Yeah, no, that's such a good question because obviously that's a huge thing that people deal with when you're, and I always say this to like a lot of my clients and like anyone I'm really speaking to that wants to make some sort of change or transformation in your life, you have to mourn that old version of yourself. And I didn't obviously realize what I was doing at the time when I had started this journey. You just kind of start for kicks and gigs. You saw someone on YouTube doing it and you're like, I'll do it. I'll go to the gym. It's fine. And you disrupt everyone else's pattern. You disrupt everyone else's environment, and people hate change. We have seen that time and time again in the last couple of years. The world hates change. We're all human. Like change is hard. And no matter if it's you making the change or you're seeing someone else do it, you're changing up the environment, the pattern. So I did that. I pattern interrupted for my entire friend group for our collegiate career, but honestly, we needed it. Someone had to do it. Like you said, like it was a recipe for disaster. You look back on it and you're like, it was written in the sand. Like this is why college students across America are struggling so hard with their mental health. They're struggling so hard with their weight and all these different pieces because it's, again, written in the sand. It's a recipe for disaster. Especially again, yeah, you're right, in the Midwest. I said I was cold yesterday here. I posted on my Instagram story. I got torn to shreds in my Instagram DMs. I had my Minnesota and Nebraska friends. They're like, girl, it's literally negative 25 here. I'm like, hey, that is your bad. You still live there. To each their own. But anyways, being that pattern interrupt for whatever you're going through, like that's hard. And no one really mentally prepares you to also, when you're making this change, to mourn another version of yourself, right? So I told all my clients and my followers this year, I'm like, new year, new you, fine, but get ready to mourn that version of yourself that you were last year. It's this dichotomy of like, you have to accept that duality will exist. You can grieve at the same time you are motivated and excited to make a change. So yeah, I got a ton of resistance because I literally, when I was in college, one of my friends called me a walking doormat. I don't think she meant it to be hurtful, but that hurt. I remember like crying. I think we were drinking at the time, but she was like, "You're a doormat." And I think that was a bit of a wake up call for me where I'm like, I don't want to be known as that. Like, I have beliefs, I have values that I want to stand on. Like, I want to stand up for myself a little bit more. So having more boundaries and saying no were all new things to me. And I'm like, no is a full sentence, but no used to be the hardest word for me to ever say. I'd say no, but I'm like, because of this and this. And like, if that's not okay with you, like we can backtrack. I don't have to say no. We can work around this. That literally used to be me. Like I was the flexible girly. And now anyone who talks to me, I'm like, I am literally a whole different person. I'm very type A. I'm like, I need things on my calendar. Like, and that's a shift I was willing to accept. But at the time, I lost friends because of that. Truly. Like, they were not okay with that. They were like, why are you saying no? You're so strict. You're so selfish. I got a lot of that oftentimes. And I knew what I wasn't doing was selfish. I knew I was building myself up to be a better version of me so I could be a better servant, right? Because at that point in my life, I was not able to serve anyone. I couldn't. If I would have taken clients on at that point, why would anyone have trusted me or followed me? And I think I always knew inherently, like, I was meant to be a leader. I was given boldness and courage, but I was trying to lead out of a place of lack versus I need to be riddled in my boundaries. So yeah, that transition period was tough as far as friends and family, but they learned, they moved on, the real ones stayed, and that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah. I think one of the personal things that I've reflected on shifting into this year is like, not so much what can I add to my plate? What can I say no?
Yeah.
Because as I step into this next season of my life, it's like there is a lot of like concrete pillars of like what this next chapter looks like. And I've come to the realization is it's no longer as like, what can I add? There will eventually be things to be added, but is what can I say no to? Yeah. What is not necessary? What can I remove? Mm-hmm. Whether that be even as like silly as like, you know, do I need Netflix in this season? Like small things, like even to that degree. Yeah. And I think so many people get so caught up and you can relate to this as a fellow coach is like, we'll have conversations with people and they're dying to make a change.
Yeah.
But there's things that they're just not willing to say no to. There's things that they're not willing to remove from their life so they can invest in themselves to then, like you said, pour from a full cup and pour from a servant's heart.
Right.
And it's uncomfortable because so many of us are like, I grew up a fat kid and all I ever wanted, like I grew up fat, like yeah. all the way, right? Until I was 19 years old and end up being 400 pounds. Like all I wanted was to be accepted.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't realize that it's like, hey, if you accept yourself and just show up, like people are you'll be just fine. Like right. You'll be accepted at where people can meet you at.
Right.
All that saying is like, what are you in this coming season in 2025? Because I feel like you're in a similar place is like, what is that moving into this year? What are you saying no to then double down on the things that are like growing forward?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think we're on a very similar page. My word for the year is actually wealth. I choose like a few, right? So it's like wealth, richness, and nourishment. I chose those not because this year I want to make a ton of money or anything. That's just like not my vice. I try and work through idolizing money. I think we all do, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, wealth to me means you're waiting. It's something worth the wait, right? It is something that has deeply nourished roots that are rich in the Lord and are nourished by God and that take time. So I'm in a season of allowing more of delayed gratification. I'm okay with waiting. I don't want the instant anymore. I still fully believe in messy action. That is, to my core, something that I just love to do. I'm like, if I have a feeling on doing something, I'm going to take the messy action. But then I'm going to allow the God to create the steps to get there. But this is my year of like, last year I got married and it was a really busy year. It was a year full of kind of putting that first, building the foundation of my marriage and planning the wedding and doing all the things. And it was crazy. And it definitely wasn't a year for my career versus this year. Again, I get to switch and I get to say, I get to slow down and make sure that the things I'm doing are for that delayed gratification. So to get there, I do need to say no to more things, I'm a very social girly. Like to this day, I still love an event, but being more thoughtful and intentional about what I'm putting on my calendar. So I'll meet someone, I'm like, we should get on a coffee date. And then I'll try to get them in the calendar that week versus I'm like, we can plan for later this month. And I think we're all adults at this point in our life where it's like, we can plan for things later. So no to, rushing things. Like, I'm just like not in the mood for that anymore. I'm like, we can take our time. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk a lot about this as I was like sifting through content. Why is weight loss not enough to build confidence?
Because it's not it. When I lost my initial weight, it was due to the habits that I was changing in my life. And I love that. And I found confidence right away, actually, in that. And just doing the things I said I was going to do. Oftentimes, I hate the words discipline. I hate the words I need accountability. I'm like, it's not what you need it, Look in the mirror and ask yourself, do you have integrity? And I think finding integrity is what equals confidence to me, right? Doing what you said you were going to do. I'm such a woman of actions over words. And that's something I do not let my clients speak into their life. They're like, I lack discipline or I need accountability. That's why I'm here. I'm like, look in the mirror. Like, this is the hardest conversation you're about to have with yourself, but do you lack integrity? So anyways, going back to your actual question, why weight loss does not equal that confidence is because when I got to my lowest and I was, 145 and I was like, holy cow, I've never seen that on the scale. I was still not satisfied at all. Not at all. I looked in the mirror. I'm like, yeah, I'm so skinny. I can see my abs. Like there was that, but there was still such a lack where I needed more and more and more. And that developed into an unhealthy relationship with food. And I over-exercised and all these different things. And I still wasn't happy. So at that point, I realized, obviously looking back then, I'm like, it's not the weight. It never will be the weight because I'm kind of at that midpoint now in my weight loss journey where it's like, sure, I could be lower, but I don't care because I'm so confident and comfortable with who I am now. Versus trying to be that lower number on the scale, which I know a lot of women struggle with, right? Like we want to see that number drop, but it does not equal your happiness when you're doing it out of a place of lack and for vanity, and you're placing your body over everything else in this world. I was completely idolizing my body. And that happened for me when I moved to Arizona, actually. Coming from Nebraska to Arizona, you see all the ladies around here and you're like, they don't make them like this in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And so coming here was the first time I ever struggled with truly my body image, like where I really felt it. And my relationship with food, I started to change for the first time ever. My parents had always raised me to be so healthy around those things. Like I was never, like you said, like you too, I was never like the smallest kid on the field.
No.
But didn't truly bother me at like a really young age. Honestly, I only felt a little bit bothered in college, but still then I didn't struggle with body dysmorphia then I came here. And I was like, y'all are made different. So that's the year I really pushed my weight loss. And I, again, found that lowest number on the scale. And I was so unhappy. I was so self-seeking and I was, placing it above everything else. I didn't want to go to events. I was fearful of going out to eat with my friends. I was thinking about food all day, every day. I was plugging in my gum in my MyFitnessPal. Like it got to this place. Yeah, it was tough. And I realized when I got to that low, I finally was like, I've not healed what's gone on inside of my heart yet throughout this whole weight loss journey. I am still trying to please other people. When, at that point when I moved to Arizona, I was actually already coaching. So I was like already preaching, like, you can't be a people pleaser. You need to be proactive in your life. Like I was already preaching these things on my Instagram.
Yep.
But I finally realized when I looked in the mirror one day at that lowest number, and I was like, you don't believe it though, truly, because you were just seeking this number. So I was able to back myself out of that. And actually, I want to take that back. I wasn't able to. That is actually the moment I found God again in my life. So I went back to church, and I just told my testimony on my podcast yesterday. And this is a huge piece of it. When I'd struggled with that so much, and I realized my heart is not right. I'm still not confident with that lowest number on the scale. What is going on? All I can think about is food. I asked my now husband to go to church for the first time. And that is what changed my life. I never sought outside help for, I was in an eating disorder at that point. I never sought outside help for that. And that's not a huge flex or anything. Like, if you guys need help, please get help always 100%. If you're struggling with that. Yeah. By the grace of God, I think that he placed this in my life to really shine a light on what wasn't healed in my life. So I started going to church consistently, started to get in the scripture, and I realized, like, it's not too small of an ask to bring to him, to burden him with, because I thought, like, he doesn't want to hear about my struggles with food. Like, he doesn't want to hear about my hurt and my body dysmorphia, but he did, and he healed that for me. And that was the moment where I was like, it's never going to be about the weight. It is 100% about your heart and what I was doing in my life to act in integrity with the temple I was given, the body I was given in this world. So it was more of finding joy in my entire life and my lifestyle, and loving the healthy lifestyle, right? I'm sure so many of your clients are like, how do I stay motivated? What do I do? I lose my motivation after like 2 weeks. And I just say, the answer is never going to be your motivation. We already know, like, it's written in the sand. Everyone talks about it. Motivation's fleeting. What I don't find to be fleeting is joy. And if you can have joy in your journey, then you're set for life. Enjoyment in what you are doing, how you wake up. I wake up so excited for the most mundane things. Like, I'm so excited to have my coffee in the morning. I'm so excited to go for my morning walk. I am so excited to get to the gym that day because I'm going to wear a cute outfit. I'm going to put my pre-workout in a cocktail glass. Like, I'm just going to make it enjoyable. Like, it's the little things.
That is such a girl thing to say.
Romanticize your life.
The pre-workout in a cocktail glass. You are not the first person that I've seen do that, heard that. It's such an entertaining concept. I think you'll appreciate this. Is there was a mantra that I created for myself last year, at a really low point as I was like stepping into that next season, is, the drill, move your ass, action kills fear. Yeah. And it was daily. Like, and I needed it just as much as like so many of my followers like reached out. Thank you. Like months later, it was all of a sudden like people would just randomly that I hadn't talked to maybe ever. Yeah. Came out of the woodwork. Thank you for saying this. Like, and it's just so true, is like, I was 400 pounds and I've been as low as 200 flat, even like shredded for a photo shoot. And I can promise you, it doesn't matter. No. It doesn't matter how many oblique lines you can see. It doesn't matter if you can see, to an extreme of like, I am going to compete this year. Yeah. It's been 16 years in the making, is like, it doesn't matter if you can see striations in your glutes. No. Like, there is no, if that is why, like, if that is why you're competing bodybuilding, if that's why you're dieting because you think that this destination is going to lead you to some form of happiness, I like coming from two people who've been there, like, yep. I promise you it's not. Nope. It ain't happening. Nope. And my husband can attest too. He's also, I don't want to tell his story, but he went through a huge weight loss transformation as well. He was probably like 350 at one point, and
he's probably had like 80, 90 pound weight loss as well.
Amazing.
So it's nice to be in a room with people who truly understand the barriers you have to overcome when you go through that transformation. It's, again, like literally mourning an old version of yourself, but also continuously coming back to those patterns that will arise again. They're going to come back. Those old feelings, those old people-pleasing tendencies. And like, we always kind of joke, like low-key, we're always fat kids at heart, right? Like we have great personalities because of it. And there's just so much that you do overcome because people don't understand that your body is not the goal in life. Like, I hope that is not what you've pictured your dream life to be surrounded with, is your body. I don't know about you, but like, I want to travel, like maybe have family, like enjoy relationships, go to church, and just like life is about so much more. And if you make that your epitome, right, your end goal, you're going to be so lonely and lost by the time you get to that end goal. But you're also a human, so we always want more. So you're always striving and always chasing. You're going to leave yourself so exhausted. And I always tell my girls, like, we have, like when they join, we call it a program, but I'm like, I just hate the word program so much because it pretty much says like there's an end date. Whereas like you're signing up for this for the rest of your life. Like, we're putting a ring on this sort of thing. So many people treat like all the new diets, like they're doing Ozempic now, they're doing carnivore diet, they're going gluten-free now because someone else did. And it's just like, they're all your little side hoes, right? You didn't put a ring on it. Like, people lack commitment within their journeys. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but got there.
It's creating a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. It's creating a sustainable lifestyle and practices around that. I think a lot of things get like bad raps. Like, I think that there's tools in the toolbox, right? I have a unique perspective in some things that I've been involved in the last couple of years. Is like, I'm actually a huge advocate of GLP-1s. Like,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you have coaching.
Right. I agree.
And it's explained to you from the get, like, hey, this is a tool in the toolbox. This is what it's doing. This is how we're going to use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
But these are the lifestyle habits that we need to build along the way.
Yeah. Amen.
Because it's not a red pill. There is no red pill in life. Because anything like in life worth having is earned. Mm-hmm. And there's no way around it at all. There's tools that, like, we live in one of the greatest times to be alive in human history. There are amazing tools to like get you from point A to point B easier.
Right.
But that doesn't skip over the fact that throughout that process, you have to build the skill sets.
Yes.
Right. Is the journey is the dream, right? Like, that is like those, it's the things that happen along the way that shape and grow, and the missteps in the valleys. It's all of those things that grow us into amazing servants.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about integrity. What does integrity mean for you?
Actions over words. Like, that's just one of my biggest values in life. I grew up around a lot of people who would say they're going to do a lot of things, and then it was always falling through. I am such a woman of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I promise you, I will do it. If I do not do it, there's a conversation around it. There's communication. So I'm always very thoughtful with my words. Words are everything. Words create your entire reality, honestly. Like, they are so powerful. Words can identify you, and that's the biggest thing I work on with my clients. They think it's so small, but they'll text me and they're like, I'm just not a morning person. I'm like, take that out of your language. Like, why did you just identify as someone who is not a morning person? So again, for me, my words mean my integrity. Everything that I say I am, everything I'm going to do, like, I'm going to show up that way because I said those things, right? Like, you can't break your own promises because you break your self-trust. Therefore, you're breaking your confidence because you haven't ever created an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. So integrity is so very important to me, and it's so very important to all I do in coaching, because you hear it all the time. Like someone identifies as, they're like, I'm a PCOS girly. Like, that's just who I am. I can't lose weight because of that. I'm like, take that out of your mouth. That is not the truth. We can work around these things, and that is not where you need to riddle yourself in. But so many people use these words and these identifiers as an excuse, something to hide behind, because they're afraid to do the harder thing. And I think a lot of the world could just use a little bit more integrity and intentionality with your words. It even goes like as far as like if someone's trying to make a date, like a coffee date with me right there, and I don't have my calendar and I don't know, I'm like, let me get back to you. Like, I will not tell someone to their face, we'll do it right here, right now. Because it's so easy when you're in that moment under the pressure to be like, yeah, we can do it next Saturday and I'll change it when I get back to my calendar. I'm like, I don't want to put that out there if that's not the truth. So yeah, integrity is important. I think a lot of the world, because you could use a little bit more.
I think it's super important. Like circling back to, we talked about saying no more.
Yeah.
Right. It's not what can I add to my plate? It's what can I take away to leave room for, like, to live in integrity with like what I say that I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
I think to your point and like what you're getting at in integrity, and like what I hear is you're very intentional and integral in what am I going to say yes to?
Yeah.
And I think that's super important to anyone, right? Like, is not only is like, okay, what can I take away this year to live more in alignment with the life that I say that I want to live? But it's also is like being more cautious about what you're saying yes to.
Yeah.
Is crucial, because I read a book recently, and it's called Bumpers. And one of the activities inside of the book is building out your perfect day.
Mm-hmm.
And the example that was used was, let's just say one of your values of your perfect day is I'm going to be home every single day at 5:00 to have dinner with my wife and kids and spend quality time.
Mm-hmm.
And $100,000 project comes across your desk. And you know that additional workload is going to put you out of integrity with being home when you say that you want to be home. It should be an immediate no.
Yeah.
An immediate no.
Right.
And if it's not an immediate no, then you're not, like, your perfect day isn't your perfect day.
Yeah.
Your values are misaligned. You're not living in integrity with who you say you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's crucial.
Absolutely. And that's the shiny object syndrome, though. It comes for you because when you put it in that context, I'm sure people listening to this are like, ooh, $100,000 project, like that would be pretty nice. Like, I can be flexible just for this season, but you forget to go back to the values that you set out for your life. That's what we forget oftentimes. So even in like my client's weight loss journey, like they're in the trendy thing now is to sign up for a marathon, right? So it's like they're doing their thing. They planned out their ideal day in their life with their macros and their lifting, and all of a sudden their friend comes up to them and they're like, let's add a marathon. And then all of a sudden I get this text that's like, hey, Coach Court, I'm doing marathon training now too. And I'm like, ooh, that's out of alignment with what we had initially talked about. But you see that everywhere, right? It's not just the marathon. It's this shiny object, this new thing that came up. And I think it's so important to hold. Yeah, I love that you brought it back to your values, because then that goes back to integrity, right? Like, what do you value most and what did you lay out at the beginning? We forget to go back to that.
And it's okay. Like, that perfect day will grow and evolve.
Yeah.
And there's going to be different seasons of life, but it's like having that check-in of like, hey, does this align with my perfect day?
Yeah.
Does my perfect day need to change? And what does that like look like? something that like comes to mind is like last year you said, hey, you walked through that season of planning a wedding, getting, married. What did that season look like for you from a perspective of health and fitness?
Yeah.
Walking through that also while managing a business and planning a wedding, because like that's a perfect example of why so many people will say, I can't afford coaching. I can't afford coaching. It's not the right time. I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
I get that all the time. People are like, oh, I'm going to wait. Like as if there's some magical, mystical time that life magically slows down.
Amen. Amen. You're speaking my language now. Honestly, those are the clients I target. The ones who say, this is a bad time, I'm going to wait. That's my niche, is literally women walking through life's transitions in the stickiest part of their lives. That's who exactly I want to work with. I want to work with you as you are in your engagement season planning your wedding. I want to work with you as you're moving from college to career. I want to work with you when you're a former athlete. Like the list could go on, right? We are always consistently going to be facing transitions in our lives. And that's exactly what I did last year. And I loved last year. Do not get me wrong, it was the busiest year of my existence, but I loved it because I really got to show and tell and practice what I preach last year, going through this whole new season, had no idea what to expect, but I hired a coach. I hired a fitness coach for the first time in a while. I personally had one. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to prove that you can afford this in the midst. You just build that into this transitional period. I'm going to work on my health and fitness, and I'm going to get the best physique I ever have in the healthiest way possible. And I'm going to plan a wedding, and I'm going to run my business, and I'm going to keep my relationship strong. And that's not to say it was all happening all at one time. Like we can't juggle, like something's always going to be a little bit higher than the others. And it really was a season of sacrifice. And that's what I like to call kind of those seasons where you got to dig in. And if you really want to make a body transformation, like there are moments where you do have to sacrifice things. And I think that that's kind of gotten lost in the sauce in society these days, especially with the word balance. I love the word balance. I think balance is so important. I'm a balanced girly, but there are seasons where you should not be balanced. And I think the word has gotten so misconstrued where it's just like, I'm going to have these french fries this weekend, #balance, when it really was your season. You said you were going to lock in. This season, you said you were going to track everything, that you were really going to not miss a workout. Like there's just seasons for that. And that's what I've built in for my girls, is literally phases. I think the phases have been very helpful because, I mean, it's the foundations, but I even tell this to my girls. I'm like, it's the foundations in disguise, right? We are gamifying it. Yeah. So I went through all the phases myself throughout that season, and it worked really, really well. How I was able to balance everything is saying no to what wasn't going to serve me for that season. I knew, okay, right now, my business needs to stay afloat, and I need to do what I can to maintain. I knew last year probably wasn't going to be a season of scaling, and I said that that's okay, right? My primary focus is building a strong foundation in my marriage and getting the best physique I ever have. Not just for the wedding, obviously. Like, there's the stereotype of like, you want to, but I'm like, you know, why not? You know, it's been a while, especially since my unhealthy relationship with food, that I've really shown my audience, like, I can do this too with you guys and do it very healthfully. So it was an awesome season, truly, to be able to show my clients, myself, that like you can be going through a transitional period and still focus on yourself and still make sure you're bringing in the income and still invest in a coach.
Absolutely.
It was a cool year, but I'm excited for 2025.
Yeah. I think it just makes us appreciate like when we can really step back and like, we can really just step back and appreciate the season that we're in, right? Like and I think also is like looking ahead.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I'd imagine you brought it up earlier. You said, okay, I want to travel, want to have a family.
Yeah.
Is going through 2025, building a foundation in your marriage, but also building a foundation in achieving the best physique that you have to date at this point.
Yeah.
That builds a foundation for your future self in being in your childbearing years, which sets you up for success on the exit of those years as well, to come back.
Yeah.
I've witnessed it personally. Like, I have a very close friend of a friend and coach and colleague, has, met his wife, gotten married, and they have their baby girl now. And his wife worked out the entire time.
That'll be me.
Like 1 week, like I think she was like 1 week, late, and was still training that week. Still squatting, still doing these things. And like her recovery period, comparatively speaking, to someone who maybe doesn't weight train, other things like that, is been just undeniable. And so it's planning ahead. And maybe you're at a point in your life like you didn't plan ahead, but you can still plan ahead for those next seasons of your life.
Yeah.
And it's building that solid foundation. And like we've talked about, it's building those habits that we can fall back on, right? Building those action steps. How has that served you? Because like you spent a lot of time, right? Junior year of college leading into this year. How is some of those habits and actions and things that like mean so much to you?
Yeah.
Played a pivotal role in your ability to probably autopilot some of those things through this past year.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I also want to touch on really quick before I forget, because I think it's so important for so many women to hear, is planning ahead. So even myself at the very beginning of this journey, it was me emotionally dieting, right? And this is what so many women struggle with. They look in the mirror one day and they see their little tummy pooch and they're like, that's it. Diet. I need to go into a calorie deficit. Yep. They go to the dressing room, they try on jeans that are 3 sizes bigger and they're like, that's it. I need to go in a calorie deficit. And it starts to happen that next day. And then you go 2 weeks and then you kind of burn out because this, that, or the other things start to happen. You didn't plan ahead. You didn't know that these things were going to happen. So I stand on that fact that you have to plan ahead. You have to look, and we just did this with all our clients. We looked the entire year ahead of time and like, nothing's going to be perfect. There's no perfect time. That's not the gist of it. But it's like, be aware, okay? You want to be at your leanest physique. For me last year, it was September. I want to be at my leanest physique. I want to look the best in September. So that means I shouldn't start a diet in January. That would be silly. I mean, I could technically actually start a diet then and then go reverse or whatever. But regardless, it's like, let's not start a diet now and try to diet all the way to September, right? That's because we looked ahead and planned ahead. And then your question on habits and everything, could you rephrase that for me so I can go back into that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is the foundation of it all, right? Like I'm curious your thoughts on this is our habits and our like baseline is what is going to create the structure. Like so many women, they're like, oh, I don't want to track my food every day.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like, oh, that's too much. Oh, this, oh, that. Like there's always this like limiting belief, this excuse of I've tried this, that, or the other thing. And I'm a huge proponent of like, there has to be a season. Like it's like you wouldn't expect your money to be safe and sound if you aren't tracking it. If you're like, what gets measured gets managed. And like, I'm a huge proponent of like weighing yourself daily.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely think that can really build a healthy relationship with scale. Like I don't think it's for everybody. I think there are extreme cases, people who can get really neurotic and really just like, it can really derail them. It can become their entire identity. Like you said at one point, you were like, all I ever did was think about food.
Yeah.
I got to my lowest weight and all I could think about was like my next meal. How can I like, get a little bit more activity or all of these things.
Yeah.
To continue to try to fill a void that was never going to be filled by those things.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is like building a foundation and habits now, like focusing on building your pillars and planning ahead for these coming seasons of a diet, of maintenance, of building muscle tissue, of etc. Like that, what is that? How has that served you? Right? How has that served you over the past year? Like, how did those habits from junior year that you've slowly built and refined and created served you in this season of like being in the best shape of your life for your wedding?
Yeah. I mean, habits and routine is the most important thing when it comes to your journey ever. Everyone's like, biggest piece of advice. Like, that's what I'll get a lot of times. I'm on TikTok live all the time. And everyone's like, how'd you do it? What's your biggest piece of advice? I'm like, fix your habits.
Yeah.
Fix your habits first and foremost. And funny enough, I'm low-key doing 75 hard right now. It's so easy. I think it's so easy because those are all habits I've built for years.
Yep.
Am I okay with my clients who are just getting started in this journey being like, I'm going to do 75 hard? No, I don't want you to do it. And that's why I'm low-key doing it, because I do know that I work with women who are just getting into the gym, and it's not super in alignment with exactly who I'm working with at the moment. But I think it'll be a very cool case study to show them like, I'm doing 75 hard right now. I don't have to talk about it all the time because it is pretty much second nature to go for a 45-minute walk every day, to get in some sort of movement every single day, to count my macros, to read a book, to learn and better my knowledge. Like, those are all things that I've built for the last 5 years since junior year, right? Like, I started listening to podcasts, and like that felt weird and hard at first. And then I started to walk myself into the self-development era, like books, which I've kind of leaned away from a little bit more. Just read the Bible. But regardless, like, I built those habits over
Greatest
time.
Self-development book ever.
Amen. We don't need all the rest of them. But I had stacks of self-development books for a while, right? Like, that was my bread and butter for a little bit. And now I read those, and I'm like, ooh, that was so lukewarm. Like, I just need something more. Really, I just need the Bible. But they just stack. They stack over time. And you have to be willing at the beginning of your journey not to go all out and go all in. And we always hear that, but it's so easy to want to go all in because of where you see all these other people online. You know, I see Garrett online. He's doing this, that, or the other. Oh my gosh, he looks great. He went through an awesome transformation. I just got to do all those things. And then you try to go from 0 to 100, and then you wonder why you burn out. A lot of you guys are about to burn out here at the end of January, and it's going to suck, and it's going to be an awakening. But there are health and fitness coaches out there who are preaching the right things, where it's like, slow your roll into January. You don't need to start the year off in a calorie deficit. You don't need to start the year off in 75 hard. You just need to start with those small things. So you talked about macro tracking. I also wholeheartedly believe in that is a great tool. Even someone who has gone through an eating disorder, someone who has struggled with her food and those numbers, I realized there is truly, truly, truly a way to count your macros and it be so important. It just comes back to your intention, always setting your intentions, checking your heart with it. But even with that, you know, we start our girls with like, can you hit your protein goal? You know, for a few months, like, hit your protein goal, then we'll stack on that. But some clients are like, give it to me right away. I'm like, that's not going to serve you. So people need to learn to slow down. Number one, let them build. Number two, you need to learn to be adaptable. That's probably my second biggest value in life, right? Integrity and adaptability, right? Because if you can't adapt in your health and fitness journey, then you are stuck in your plateaus or in your cycling for the rest of your life. Because like I said, I'm a transition coach. I want to help women going through those periods of time that are going to change their lives forever, right? When you have a baby, you're no longer that person you were now. Like, things have changed forever. Same with like getting married. Things have now changed forever. Same with being a former athlete. You are no longer that athlete version of yourself. So I love to help women mourn that old version of themselves. I know it sounds sad and horrible, but like, it's amazing at the same time. There's that duality. But you can't do what worked for athlete version of yourself. You can't do what worked for pre-baby anymore. Like, you are a whole new person. So if you can't adapt your healthy habits, then you're stuck because you're like, well, this isn't working anymore. Like, I did this to lose weight before and like, why isn't it working anymore? Because you're not that person anymore.
No.
So I did a lot of that last year of adapting and kind of figuring out, okay, what's my new norm? So like you mentioned earlier, like drawing out your ideal day in your life. I actually do that once a quarter. Like that is a very strict practice within my business. I just draw, okay, what does this quarter look like for me? Like what are my intentions? What am I looking to grow? And you should all do that in your health and fitness journey as well, right? Like what is my current goal right now? Okay, I want to optimize my metabolism. I want to build some muscle. So that means my habits need to align with that, right? So I don't need to be focusing on things that are going to help me in a calorie deficit. Right now, I don't need to be doing so much cardio. So that doesn't need to be my ideal day of my life right now. Yeah. But, in next quarter, I'll be doing that a lot more. So I saw a lot of shift for me going into that. My life, honestly, leading up to the wedding was super mundane. Like I was just riddled in my routine. Woke up, knew I was going to get to the gym, came home, did my work, had my first meal. Then I went on my run. Then I went and had my other meal. It was just very routine and mundane versus other seasons. I know I can be more flexible.
Mm-hmm. This is the Intentional Health for Women podcast. Final question. Everybody gets asked. What does living intentionally in this coming season look like for you?
What a perfect question for this whole podcast. How many times did I say the word intention? How do I live intentionally in this season of life? Is that what you just said?
What does living in intention look like for you coming into this next season of life?
It is honestly, the Lord has shifted a lot of my heart within the last year as well. Last year was so pivotal for just my overall faith journey, and it was really cool to see. Got baptized last year with my husband.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we totally lived our lives to the best of our ability by the Bible from that moment forward up until the wedding. The wedding was amazing. The Lord was invited first and foremost. We brought other people to God with that wedding, and it was so cool. In the ceremony, like we literally had a moment where people came and prayed, and we heard from other people after that they went to church. And then after the wedding, I was in this season of just like slowness, and I was like, what is going on? Like I was so busy before, working on my body, working on planning the wedding, all these different things. And then it just stopped, and I dug into the word a little bit more, and then he blessed me with a community called Holy Girl Walks, which I have co-founded now with my friend Katie. And he called us to be servants this year. And so for me, walking into this next year, it is number one, intentionally being a servant for the Lord. So bringing it into everything that I do. I want to get strong again this year. I'm really excited for that season of my life as a coach to then show women what I'm doing. Okay, last year I was working really on getting lean. Like that was a whole different season. This year I want to get strong again. So you guys are going to see me working hard in the gym and staying strict with my program. But you're also going to see me always starting my day with the word, my quiet time, not sacrificing that for anything or anyone, and then being a servant, showing up and serving at church and hosting the Holy Girl Walks and bringing it into my business, which is the scariest thing a business owner could do for no reason, but it is. But bringing it into every single piece of my life. So that is my intention this year, is to slow down, serve, and build really strong roots with everything that I do.
Amazing. Where can we find you?
At CBardofit on Instagram and TikTok. I am a TikToker, guys. I'm so happy that it's still here. The Lord blesses me through TikTok, so we love it there. And I probably should change my since I'm not Lombardo anymore. I'm Walker, but
there you go.
I digress.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun.
If this episode brought you value, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. We are not normal. We are intentional.